And we're live.
Good afternoon and welcome to the AIB meeting for today's date, which is November the, what is it? November the 17th. 16th.
16th.
Right. Been a long day so far. First of all, let's see who's on with us today. Let's go through our roll, if you don't mind, Madam Executive Director.
Yes, Mr. Chair. In addition to yourself, we have Vice Chair Kerwin and members Lynch, Doss, Manco, Robinson, and Stapleton. Everyone is present.
Thank you, and thanks for everyone tuning in today. I'm delighted that we're together. We have a number of very important items to go through today, but I want to make sure that, again, as usual, thank our staff, Rachel, and all of those who worked over the last couple of months on a number of very important initiatives, in addition to all the work that has been accomplished over the last year and a half, which is quite remarkable, in my opinion, to see so much that we've accomplished in such a rapid time frame. And all of those who've gone out and made speeches, participated in panels, work sessions, have been quite a bit over the last couple of months, and they continue because this is a very important topic. Let me just remind everyone that if there are questions or issues that you do not feel comfortable about, please confer with our executive directors and others, because there's sometimes a lot of speculation about what we've decided, what we've not decided, what is happening as it relates to the Department of Education and others. But we have to be clear about what we are saying to the public and make certain that what we are saying is consistent with what we've formally adopted. And so that's the process that we're going to follow. But feel free to get out and engage with the public and leaders so that we can get the message out about what we are doing. It is very helpful for us to do so, but let's be consistent about that message and make certain that we are following that protocol. At this point in time, we're going to look at our meeting summary from the last meeting to see whether or not there are any changes or additions there too. I hope that everyone has had an opportunity to look at it. And if they have, entertain a motion to approve the summary of the prior meeting.
I'll move acceptance.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second that we approve the summary of the last meeting. Okay, then a discussion on the motion. Hearing or seeing none, I'll call for the motion. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Any opposition? Hearing none, we will proceed on. The agenda for today, we have a number of items that are in for us to consider. Hope you've had an opportunity to look at it, and if you have, if you want to make any changes or adjustments to that, please say so now. But adjustment changes or explanation about the agenda for today?
I don't see any hands.
Nope. Wonderful. All right, then we'll proceed now to the executive director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a number of updates for you. And please feel free to ask questions along the way. The first item is the staffing update. And I previously reported that we received a number of really well qualified applications for our policy analyst positions, education policy analyst positions. We are in the final stages of selecting policy analysts, and I'm very, very pleased with the expertise and the various experiences that the folks that we're considering have, and I think that we're really on our way to continuing to build an excellent staff team for AIB. We're hopeful to be making final offers and bringing folks on board ideally before the end of the calendar year. So that's where we are on staffing for the policy analysts. We are also, Oh, yes.
Could you explain generally for the public the process, so people may not be aware of it, and a little bit of confusion, just generally the process that is followed here?
Sure. So obviously we had a job notice that was posted on the state's jobs website as well as our website, and we also ran ads in the Washington Post, the Baltimore Sun, and did a lot of other outreach to make sure that there was awareness of the opportunities. And those applications are submitted. They go through the Department of Budget and Management for review and identification of the applicants that meet the minimum requirements. And then they also identify the best qualified and better qualified candidates. And then they come to AIB, and at that point, then we review the applications and identify the candidates that we would like to interview. And there's a first interview with a team, and then a second interviews with myself and whoever their supervisor would be, their manager, and then the process to vet a person and make an offer. There are different requirements that the state has that DBM assists us with, and then ultimately we can make an offer, and there are some rules about that as well, and then negotiate and agree on, if both sides agree, then we agree on a hiring date, and then there's a lot of paperwork.
I got you. Okay. Are there any questions?
Everyone who applied will ultimately receive notification of the resolution of the process. So DBM does have a process where they notify everyone who applied.
I've had a number of questions of people asking about why it takes so long. I guess that's just the process that once you go through the state procedures that essentially usurp a great deal of their time, correct?
It definitely is it definitely takes time, but also the process of, we interviewed I think 16 or 17 people, so it takes time to schedule interviews, to conduct the interviews, then we also have a writing exercise that everyone does, and then to take all of that and then determine who you want a second interview, and then the results of that, and then making the decision about who to hire, and then you get back into the sort of the administrative paperwork process. So altogether it does take a significant amount of time.
Okay. Are there any questions about that process that we follow?
Mr. Manco?
Now, Rachel, how many applicants did we get overall for the policy analyst positions? And then what are the additional positions that we are continuing to hire for after those positions get filled?
Thank you. That's where I was going to next. But in terms of how many final applications we received, can I ask Leland if you can share that information? I know we got a certain number of applications, and then there were a number of them that were not determined to be meeting the minimum qualifications. So the number that we could actually consider, I think, was around 70.
Yes, sure. We received 135 application total, and 75 candidates were reviewed by DBM and classified as qualified. That's a total.
75. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And then in terms of, so we actually are just about to post the communications and outreach job notice. So that's the next one that we will be posting soon. I think we're gonna just wait until after Thanksgiving because it posts for there's a 2-week standard timeline for how long applications are posted. So I think we want to wait until after Thanksgiving to post it because nobody's probably going to be looking for it on Thanksgiving. And then after that, we're going to work on the research and accountability director, as well as we also have a data fiscal analyst position that we want to recruit for. I think we might wait until a little further into the spring for that one, which is a really good time to recruit folks that are coming out of graduate school or undergraduate even.
Okay. Any further questions? Member Mako, that's all you had for question on?
Yeah, that's all for me, but Dr. Kerwin has a question.
Oh, yes.
Yes, Rachel, I had got momentarily distracted. You may have mentioned it, and I apologize. What about the communication director? Did you mention that?
Yes, that's the next one. That is the next
Okay.
Position that we're gonna
That you will
recruit for.
post?
Yep,
Okay, so it hasn't been posted yet.
correct.
Okay,
We're gonna
thank
wait
you.
until after Thanksgiving.
That's the one. Okay, I apologize. Thank
No.
you.
No
Okay.
further.
I don't see, but please, sometimes it's hard to see those hands in the corner of your pictures. So the next item is an update on the advisory committees, and they have been quite active recently. So if I could ask Rachel Amstutz to provide an update.
Hi there, I was on mute. The advisory committees have been phenomenally engaged here recently. But if I start with our update, at the last meeting, all of the individuals that were recommended for appointment accepted the appointment to their roles. So that included 2 new student members on Pillar 1 and 2, and then 3 new members on Pillars 2, 3, and 4. And the meetings that have already occurred that have included new members, we've got people jumping in right away. So it's been really great to hear from them as they're getting started, and they're bringing really great perspectives to the members that returned for each of the pillars. Each of our advisory committees we've asked them to meet quarterly, but they've really found that there's a lot more work and more things to talk about than quarterly. So most of them are moving to a monthly, or every other month schedule, and they're still working on the dates, but we will be getting all of those published on our calendar so that everybody has an opportunity. We're also beginning to see an increase in viewing of people that are watching the advisory committees, and even today got a comment and a request to be able to speak or share public comment at one of the advisory committees. So we believe that the conversations are very rich and engaging. And I think from my perspective, the way that the committee selected the members, we're really hearing the diversity of each pillar's complexities. So there's the perspectives that are coming in. Yesterday, we had a really great meeting on Pillar 3, and it hit all components of Pillar 3. We're looking at the CCR side of things, the CTE side of things, workforce. We just have really robust conversations. So the advisory committees are really up and rolling. So they've had a year under their belts, and they are coming up with some very insightful recommendations. When their member liaisons are able to attend the meetings, it's been really helpful to generate conversation and to bring things back. And I think that each of our committees is committed to providing insights to you to consider from their vantage point. So I think you're going to hear more from them this year. And I'm really appreciative to all of our committee chairs and co-chairs for the leadership that they've given to setting the agendas and getting the information out about the topics. I do also want to mention that they've been very instrumental in raising voices. If I take a minute to think about Pillar 1, they have brought together in each of their basically hour-long meetings, the last two, perspectives from public and private providers. They've highlighted partnerships with our institutions of higher education, and they've brought in the voices of our childcare associations and other providers. It's been really rich conversation to kind of showcase what's happening, and that's the good things that are happening and the challenges. So when they're raising those, we're then able to address some of the hiccups or try to help and keep things moving so that people know that they're being heard. So the advisory committees have been absolutely phenomenal, and they're just really committed to the work.
Rachel, how often do they meet? What is their meeting rhythm?
So it's a little bit different for each one. The guidance that they were given was quarterly, that they need to meet at least once quarterly. Many of them are moving this year to either monthly or every other month, or monthly and taking off the month of December because it's a little busy.
Right.
But they're still in the process. They're trying to get ahead of it, actually, and to publish their list of topics for each of the meetings and to coordinate their topics to kind of what's happening in blueprint implementation and in the school year. So we should actually be able to give you a list of topics by each of our committees very soon. A couple of them have it drafted and a couple of them are almost done.
Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Mr. Manco?
Yeah,
Thank you.
I just publicly wanted to thank you, Rachel, for all your work on this, because I know it's been a really, really heavy lift, and there's a lot of a lot of folks to manage, and you've been so steadfast throughout the nomination selection process, the standing up of these committees, and just being present in supporting each of them to help them do their good work. And I think we're really seeing the dividends of that now. Because we're getting a lot of really, really good feedback from them, and they're helping us to engage and think through what some of the challenges are with blueprint implementation. So appreciate you for pulling this all together and making it all work.
I appreciate that, and I can't let that go without an acknowledgement that it's a team effort. It's a lot of work getting the applications in and all of that, and Shawanda Smith on our team and Lisa Armstrong are also really contributing to this work to make sure that we're hearing from our committee members.
Okay, let's go on, Rachel, to the next.
Yes, absolutely. I did just want to remind everyone that the advisory committees meetings are public, and so they are posted on our website on the meetings tab, the upcoming meetings, and then also all of the meetings are archived and recorded. So if you missed, for all of those watching the meeting, if you're interested in advisory committee, what's been going on in those meetings, you can they're all there for you to watch. The next update is on the Blueprint Comprehensive Plan. Just very quickly, we're working with our team to pull the final document together and in all of its formatting and presentation, so that we can post that, as well as get hard copies printed and available. So we will be in December, we will be able to post the final updates in its pretty form, shall we say, as well as we'll have the hard copies available as soon as possible. But just a reminder that we do have all of the 5 pillar sections are posted on the website with the final language that was adopted by the board. So the substance of it will not change from what is posted on the website now on the implementation plan tab.
Member Curran, Vice Chair Curran raised a question about a more accessible, easier communicative handout of some sort. I know we had something that was a smaller summary. I wasn't sure whether or not you two of you had talked about that in terms of whether or not he was satisfied with what we had, or did we need to do something different. So I'm interrupting you, Vice Chair.
No. Thank you for raising that question. I wanted to ask Rachel about that myself.
We have been thinking about that, and we will put that on our next agenda with our communications team to see what their advice might be on that. They're pulling together various documents and materials that we can share with different audiences around what about the blueprint, for parents, for teachers, for school leadership. And so I will talk with them to see what they would suggest. I think what the vice chair and I talked about was sort of like an executive summary type, shorter, because the comprehensive plan is, 200 pages long, like some sort of a shorter summary that's much more accessible to everyone, which I think we definitely need.
Okay.
Well, I just to pick up on this point, I think one of the challenges we face is, and we have to be honest about this, if you ask the average person on the street, they have no idea what the blueprint is. I have a close friend who was talking to some teachers in Montgomery County schools and said, what do you think of the blueprint? These are teachers now. They didn't know what the blueprint was. I couldn't believe it. And so I think, all of us we're going out across the state and to meetings and so on and so forth, just to have something, a brochure that explained to the public what the blueprint is, what it's hoping it plans to achieve, and a summary of the pillars, I think would be enormously useful as a communication tool. While I'm speaking on communication, I do want to give a shout out to our esteemed executive chair. Those of us who live in the DC area and listen to WAMU, they have been broadcasting over and over again a report on the blueprint, thank goodness. And it was done with interviewing a bunch of people at a recent meeting, Rachel.
It was at the annual elementary and secondary principals conference,
and
a couple weeks ago.
Rachel got interviewed and did a superb job of explaining the blueprint and what its impact will be on the state. But that's the kind of visibility we need to be getting out more and more, I think. But anyway, enough on that.
So I think I'll follow up for sure. I think it might be helpful if we invite our communications team to come talk with you all.
Yes.
I'll see if they can come to the December meeting, because I totally appreciate what you're saying. The approach that we're trying to take is develop materials for different audiences, because they how they engage with the blueprint is
right.
different. And so it's not just one, unfortunately.
No, I totally agree with that.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
there's a general communication via a document that I think would be helpful. That incidentally, on the plan that you're about to publish, we will be doing an update, right? So will we go through this every year? Will you publish a new plan when we update, or how will that work?
That's a very good question. And this year we're just going to republish it, and the update, we're working on showing how to show the changes that were made as part of the update in the pieces of the document for this year. I think moving forward, we might want to think about how we can format it in a way where we're not reprinting the entire document every year. I'm not sure that's helpful for anyone.
Right.
So, but for this year, we're reprinting it and we're showing what changes were made from the first initial plan to the
Mhm.
updated plan.
Okay.
And then we're gonna sort of, I think maybe we'll get some feedback, see what makes the most sense to do moving forward. And regarding that interview, I just also want to give a shout out to the student journalists who put that who did the interviews and put that material together. It's called the Local News Network, and it's a set of journalism students at the University of Maryland College Park who are focusing on blueprint implementation and really trying to provide more information around blueprint and what it is and what it means. And they'll be releasing a series of information around each LEA's blueprint implementation plan. I think they're waiting until January I think they're going to wait until after the holidays in December to release all of that, but we'll make sure that we'll link to it on our website so everybody has access to it as well. If there are no other questions on that, we will, the next item is the state implementation plan review process. And I'd like to ask Emma Pellerin, our implementation plan director, if she could provide an update on that.
Yep, absolutely. So at our last meeting, as you all know, we approved, the AIB approved the CTE committee's blueprint implementation plan. And similar to the CTE committee, AIB staff met with staff from the Maryland Higher Education Commission, as well as the Maryland State Department of Education, to review and provide feedback and ask questions on their blueprint implementation plans. And since we have met with them, and that was a series of meetings too with MSDE staff, which we greatly appreciate the time that they provided to discuss the plan and to answer our questions. We compiled a list of follow-up questions. Similar to CT committee, we're asking for a updated response for those questions that MSD and MHEC now have and are working on. And we should receive those updated responses after the holiday. And once those are received, we'll take a look at those and follow a similar process moving forward. And hopefully we can present that those recommendations for approval for those plans in the next meeting. But we still need to receive the updated responses that we need for those questions. And then we are also meeting with consortium for the consortium staff on their implementation plan coming up, I believe the Monday or Tuesday after the holiday. So we'll again follow a similar process with them to, if needed, ask for updated responses on their plans. So we're making good progress and are excited to be able to present those recommendations for approval, hopefully in the very near future.
Thank you.
Any questions on that? As Emma said, we're very hopeful that we will bring as many of those plans to you for approval at the December board meeting as we possibly can. The next item, if there are no questions, is our technical assistance grant, our strategic facilitator TA grant update, and Rachel Amstutz is going to provide that update.
Alrighty, so we were very, very fortunate in finding a really incredible group of strategic facilitators. Every time we meet together, we are in awe of the thinking and the wisdom that they bring to this work. So since we've last met, or where we are in the process, the local systems and the CTE committee had to meet and work with their strategic facilitator to create an initial project plan and to do all of the legal and business paperwork to launch the grant. That is almost completely behind us now. We're all set. We're moving forward, and each of the groups are now in the final plans phase. They have submitted to us as of yesterday their kind of scope of work, if you will, or what they hope to accomplish in the grant. And we are going to be reviewing those now and getting them final feedback and approval on that work. It's been really, really amazing to see and hear feedback from our partners, from the districts, about the support that these strategic facilitators are lending and are able to lean in on. So there are some common areas that I think I shared last time, like career ladders are a big focus for many of our counties, but in other instances, there are just uniquenesses that certain districts needed extra support with, or to get research on certain things. One of our strategic facilitators is really supporting a district on the shore with Pillar 1 and really thinking about the uniquenesses of expanding pre-K programming on the shore. And there's a lot of complexities. So I think we're seeing the win of being able to provide one person to each of the districts who can dig in and understand their unique pieces, where we tend to have to keep the statewide perspective on things and can't always drill down to that level. These strategic facilitators are, and then they come back to us and let us know, and we're able to provide professional development and technical assistance to them on the big topics. So in line with that, we recently held our first community of practice session with the strategic facilitators. And essentially, we're doing that monthly for 2 hours. That's going to be the minimum of the support that we'll be providing to the strategic facilitators. And it's meant to have two purposes. It's us being able to share information with them, to be able to give them blueprint specific information and kind of where things are right now, and make sure that they are armed with the most current and accurate information. But then also to hear back from them. What are the commonalities around the state that maybe we need to lean in and provide more technical assistance around? Or what are the hurdles or challenges, the sticking points? And really what we're coming to see is that among the team of strategic facilitators, they bring unique areas of expertise. So a few of our strategic facilitators have extensive backgrounds in grants and braiding funding, and they're able to help train the others and to help spread that knowledge around. Others have extreme backgrounds in strategic planning and really the processes involved in that. And so they're able to come back and share with us on that as well. So I think this has been a very rewarding experience to see that this was really needed, that our districts needed that extra outside lens, somebody to be able to see the work and dig in and help them just walk the walk with them and plug in any gaps. So we're in a great place as the grant is kicking off. Like I said, the final plans were due yesterday. We're finally getting it fully up and running phase. And there've been some really fabulous meetings of the strategic facilitators in the districts. And one of the rewarding parts for me is hearing the direct feedback from our blueprint coordinators about the role that these people are already playing, that it's been just a relief to have another person to be able to talk things through with and to help plan. It's already doing what we had hoped that it would do. So we're off to a great start. We have 22 of our LEAs plus the CTE committee paired with a strategic facilitator. And one other thing I do want to mention, we are we're using them to help work with the blueprint implementation plan development for the 2024 submission, and being able to bounce things off of them or show them kind of where things are headed to get their insights too. Like it just helps us have extra eyes and extra perspective on processes before we send them out sometimes. So are there any questions I can answer about that?
The input from the local educators in terms of the usefulness is what is their response been? I couldn't hear quite what you said about that. You said about the local contact person, but what about down within that? How has that been received?
So the initial launching point is really to pair the strategic facilitator with the local blueprint coordinator. And then after that, we've also asked the blueprint coordinators to make sure that the strategic facilitator has access to the superintendent and executive teams. And then depending on the district and how they structure the work, sometimes they're focusing very heavily on a certain pillar. In all cases, they're working on all pillars, but sometimes the strategic facilitator is really partnering with the pillar 3 lead in a county and the team in that county that supports the development and the work of implementing that pillar. So the feedback that I have gotten so far has been overwhelmingly positive from blueprint coordinators and from pillar leads that have had the opportunity to work with our strategic facilitators. The comments have been just, that it's been a breath of fresh air, a really helpful tool, a relief to have somebody to walk with them in this, or to be able to not be in isolation planning things, but to have the strategic facilitator there for them. So all overwhelmingly positive to date.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Dr. Doss?
Rachel, this is really good news. Is there a formal evaluation process embedded in the grant to determine, or so that we can, at the end of this or somewhere, look at the performance of the strategic facilitators to see how they helped or what else may be needed?
So, Rachel, I'm not sure. Do you want to take that one?
Sure. We absolutely are planning to evaluate the value add, shall we say, of the strategic facilitators, and the degree to which the LEAs have found them to be useful, the degree to which the AIB staff and members find it useful, and in order to make a decision at the end of the year about whether, what we want to do next. So absolutely, we will be evaluating that. So having an evaluation is part of the process. What that looks like, we haven't fully finalized that yet. So that's something that we could share a draft of with you all, and get your feedback on that as well.
Okay.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Yes, I have one. Rachel, the other Rachel, mentioned the CCR. Not this, no, not CCR, the career ladder. And I know you've been thinking about and having some conversations about the career ladder and trying to provide some assistance to the LEAs about the creation of a career ladder. Is that something that you're prepared to talk about now, or is that a later topic?
I could certainly, just briefly talk about that, and then we can follow up. So the AIB and State Department of Education are hosting a convening tomorrow afternoon. It is the second convening to provide essentially technical assistance support around the career ladder development. And since the first convening was held in July, and between then and now, AIB staff, myself and others, as well as a small group of blueprint coordinators, CFOs from LEAs, and state and local union representatives, a small group, have been meeting to work on developing some shared understandings of what the career ladder could look like, sort of some provide more guidance around samples or examples of career ladders that different folks have been working on. And so we're going to be sharing all of that information and so I'm happy to report back on how that goes. Share that all with you at the next meeting.
Yeah, I think this is really important, so that we have, I like the idea of having some examples out there so that we don't have 26 or 24 different career ladder plans, that there's some guidance given as to what's going to be expected for them to be approved. And so I'm glad that you're working on this, and it sounds like it's going well.
Yeah, and part of what we're trying to help everyone understand is sort of what is required, you know, what
Right.
is the law, because the law has very specific requirements that every
Yes.
career ladder has to include. And then where is there flexibility? That where each LEA and their local union, you know, need to figure out and work through what makes sense for their district and for their educators. And so hopefully we will provide more clarity around that as well. So we likely will have, 24 career ladders that might look a
Right.
little different, but they
That
will
would be
have
fine. Yeah.
certain similarities, certain framework, and then different areas where, different districts might focus
Local
on
option, yes.
pieces. Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess we need to drill down because there still is some confusion about it, and making sure people understand that we want a career ladder that has some level of flexibility, but respond to some broad principles that I think we should want to see in basically all of them. But it's not the career ladder. You need a career ladder that conforms to what I've just described.
Exactly. Well stated.
Correct. And the other thing I will just share is that one, and it's sort of a bit of a segue to the next topic, which is on the 2024 implementation plan template update. In the discussions we've been having with MSDE around what the LEA plans in particular might look like for this next submission, one decision that we made is to keep this career ladder as a separate submission from the implementation plan. And that is in part because of the timing of when negotiations are typically completed in the year, which is May, typically at the earliest. So the timing of that made it difficult for the career ladder to be part of the March 2024 submission. So the career ladders are going to be due July 1st,
Okay.
2024. And so continuing on with the update on the LE implementation template, we previously talked to you about the follow-up work that we did with MSDE and with our consultant Lumen to kind of get feedback from the LEAs and the blueprint coordinators around the initial template and the plans that they were asked to submit in 2023 earlier this year, and we got a lot of feedback, a lot of concerns about the length of the template, so particularly some technical challenges with submitting the document and being able to collaborate on it with their colleagues in the districts. And so we have been working with MSDE for months on what a revised template could look like and what the process could be. And we have we're to a point where we have a draft template. We have not shared it with the coordinators yet because it's not quite ready for that. But we've gone from 164 questions in the initial template to, I think as of now, we're at 30 questions. So it's very, very much more focused, targeted questions, or fewer questions that give the LEAs the opportunity to focus and tell us, you know, have more flexibility around what their priorities are and what they want us to know about what they're doing and what's working around the 5 pillars. We also are going to be moving to essentially the format of their plan can be how each LEA can determine the format of it. And you know, we're going to have like, you know, no more than whatever, 11-point fonts, some guidelines, but beyond that, it can take the form however they want. They won't have a template per se to fill out. They will just have questions to respond to. And so that should make the submission, the collaboration process and the submission process infinitely smoother. And we've shared this information with the blueprint coordinators as well. We had a meeting with them last week. But as I said, we haven't actually shared the draft template yet, as we're trying to, we're really trying to respond to what we're hearing from superintendents, from blueprint coordinators, and as the strategic facilitators are coming on board and talking with their districts about how can we use the template or this submission process to really support strategic planning and strategic thinking around blueprint implementation, and how the LEAs are sort of how the goals of the blueprint are sort of infusing with the goals of the school system, and so that we're really sort of aligned in moving forward and trying to achieve the goals of the blueprint. So we're really trying to think about how to imbue that strategic planning process in some way into the template, into the submission, not necessarily the template. So that's where we are with that. We are continuing to work, collaborate with MSDE staff. We meet many times a week, and to work on this and other things. And so we are aiming to get that template out to the LEAs as soon as we can. We have shared a series of what we call a blueprint reflection tool, which is sort of a series of kind of visioning and strategic planning type questions around the overall blueprint and what implementation will look like in your district and in your schools over the next 10 years, both overall and then within each pillar. So we've shared that with all of the blueprint coordinators as a way to sort of be thinking about the kind of information that we'll be asking for in the template, even though they don't have the template yet. And then we'll also be working on the criteria for success that will be used in the review process of their 2024 submissions. And that criteria for success is subject to the board's approval. So we will be bringing that to you for approval next month. Are there any questions on that? And also, Emma or Rachel, is there anything I didn't touch on?
I think you got everything.
Thanks.
I agree. Nothing else.
Any questions?
Okay, now let's move on then.
All right, our last update is on the outcome measures work group. And Emma is going to provide an update, and if members Stapleton and Manco may also have some more to add.
So the outcome measures work group had their first fall meeting in late October. And during that meeting, Dr. Tolson presented the final draft of the outcome measures work group report, prioritizing equity at the forefront of outcome measures that he presented to the AIB at our last public meeting. and took questions from the outcome measures work group members. And since then, as you all know, AIB staff are working with MLDSC staff to on the outcome measures and on the target setting process. And so MLDSC staff have been working on a target setting framework to present to the outcome measures work group at next week's meeting on November 21st for their feedback. And the framework will help to set in place a process to ensure that each target and each measure is reviewed with rigor, and we're ensuring that the targets that are set are reliable because they are based off of reliable data, and that we can have faith in the target that's being set that's reasonable and ambitious for the state and local measures that the work group and recommended to the AIB, and the AIB has approved for the Blueprint Comprehensive Plan. So that target setting process, the draft of that was presented to the ex officio members of the work group at last week's meeting. They provided, or I'm sorry, this week's meeting, forgetting which day it is. They provided feedback on the drafts that staff have incorporated into the framework, and will be presenting the next version of the draft target setting process for the full work group at next week's meeting for their feedback. And our hope is to also present updated logic maps to the work group once they are available as well. They have seen versions of logic maps at the blueprint and pillar levels in previous meetings, and we hope to be able to present updated versions again once those are available moving forward. So once that target setting framework is finalized, which we hopefully will be able to do very soon, we will be using that framework to look at each measure and to help set targets for each measure. We're also still concurrently working on accessing data that we will be using to set targets for each measure as this is going on at the same time. Other next steps include, as needed, we've already started this process, but looking at each measure to see if there's additional clarity that's needed, ensuring that we understand how each measure will work in terms of things like linearity, like are we expecting to see continued growth over time, or the same level of growth over time? Are we expecting to see increases or decreases at different places? And is there basically clarity needed at all in the measures to ensure that we have all the information that we need to set the target for each measure? So that is again going on as we are finalizing the target setting framework for the target setting process. So that's where we are right now, and we hope to have even more updates on actual targets for the measures at the next meeting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions?
I don't see any hands raised. Member Stapleton or Mako, did you want to add anything? Nope, all good. All right. Are we ready to move on to the next item?
I think we are. I don't have my agenda up in front of me. We're with the CCR at this point.
No, it is the statewide literacy instructional support expert team proposal. It's a mouthful. I will, if you would like, I will go ahead and just sort of explain the proposal, and then we can see if there are any questions and a motion. So we've talked about this at previous meetings. AIB and MSDE have been working on a proposal to supplement the expert review team visits, which are have actually just begun yesterday. The first expert review team, official expert review team visits started yesterday. They will be visiting 50 schools over the next 5 months. So the last visits are in March. Right now is the schedule. And so we've been working with MSDE to come up with a way to provide more focus on early literacy and how we can support the LEAs in ensuring that they are doing all the things that are the most best practices to support improving reading proficiency by the third grade, which is a huge critical milestone in for students' future success. We've there've been a number of different ideas that we've thought about over the past few months, and the proposal that is before you is a little bit different than what we last talked about, but also has a lot of similarities. The State Board of Education approved this proposal at their meeting last week. So now it is before the AIB for approval. And as a reminder, the goal here is to utilize savings that are available from the expert review team appropriation. That is, they're visiting 50 schools this year rather than about 140, which is under the statute, the expert review teams are to visit 10% of public schools each year, starting this year. So that would be about 140 schools. So in addition to the 50 that the MSDE expert review teams are going to visit this year, sort of how to use the funds to do something more targeted on early literacy, and at the same time also meet that 10% school visitation requirement. So the proposal that everyone has is for literacy experts to be sent into all 24 school systems over the remainder of the school year in order to really examine their comprehensive early literacy plan, their curriculum, their high quality instructional materials, all the things that really are part of a comprehensive literacy plan, as well as, and of course, meet with the district staff, meet with the specialists in the central office and also in the schools, and to visit approximately 10% of the elementary schools in each LEA to observe elementary reading instruction, both teachers and instructional coaches, that many of our LEAs are using instructional coaches to support the both literacy and math, actually, better improved instruction, and also training that teachers and coaches are receiving, particularly around science of reading, which is one of the Maryland Leads grant initiatives this year that most of the LEAs are participating in. So the idea is to really, use literacy experts specifically to examine, get a good sense of what's going on in each LEA, and then make recommendations that both for the LEA and also for the MSDE and AIB in terms of what additional technical assistance or other support would be helpful, so that school systems are able to really lean in and focus on improving our reading proficiency scores in third grade.
Yeah. There is a challenge, and this is different. I think we've discussed this over a number of months, and the impetus for that was initiated from this end. And so we needed to make sure that we had the state board actively engaged in what was initially suggested, and they came up with what I thought was some very good responsive answers to creating the plan that we have before us. It is not what we originally stated, so we made some adjustments as we've gone forward. The cost factors are something that is also limiting it to us. And so once we get this out into the street and we are looking at it, we will have an opportunity, hopefully, to see how this is progressing. If we need to make adjustments, we'll do so all along the way. But I think this is a good start for us, a good opportunity for us to really understand what is happening more so on the ground for us in a way that we have not so far. And I'm hopeful that we can get this implemented as quickly as possible. And I think that we can get some meaningful results that help us build the momentum as we go forward. So hopefully we will support this. If there are any questions, let's try to address those now.
Mr. Manco.
Yeah, just curious if if either the AIB staff or folks from MSD have gotten feedback on the proposal from the LEAs and I guess their receptiveness to this, how supportive they are, if they feel like this is going to be a value add, just what their overall response is.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for asking that. We did talk with the superintendents about the proposal and share the concept with them, and it was well received. I think the main concern was that it was not too significant of a lift on their end to put materials together or that kind of thing, for particularly for like the school visits in particular. And so MSDE and we talked with MSDE about that, and they totally agree. So it will not be a heavy lift for the districts or the schools. Although I will say that we have asked the districts to provide their draft literacy comprehensive plan for early literacy for pre-K through 5 by January 15th. And that is so that the literacy experts will have the latest draft of, so not that it's finalized or, all of their thinking, but wherever they are in the process to share that draft in January so that the literacy experts have that available to them when they in advance of coming to talk with the district. Member Dawes?
Sure, thank you. Did you mention how the literacy experts would be recruited?
I did not. Right now, based on the amount of funding that is available, is estimated to be available to support this, the idea is to engage approximately 10 literacy experts who would visit the schools in teams of 2. And then, as we said, get to all 24 districts before the end of the school year. It wouldn't necessarily be 10 full-time literacy experts. It would be sort of the equivalent of 10 full-time experts. So it would be, because this is a pretty big undertaking, and finding 10 full-time experts who would have that time available, is challenging. So AIB and MSD have been talking talking about and reaching out to higher education partners who already have literacy experts on staff, and doing some of this work now as a potential approach for, as the chair said, trying to get this off the ground as soon as possible. Dr. Kerwin?
Yes. Members Manco and Doss asked my primary question, but I do have one other, two other. Will you be involved, or will AIB be involved in selecting the literacy experts?
I don't necessarily envision that we'll be involved in selecting the experts, but we're certainly collaborating very closely with MSDE around the program design and implementation. So we'll certainly be part of those discussions, but not necessarily the actual selection.
Okay. Secondly, I'm presuming that the work of these consultants will help guide us when we come to approving the literacy plans from the LEAs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, part of
Okay,
what they'll
good.
be doing is providing feedback on their
Right.
draft.
So we'll have a really solid foundation for making decisions of whether or not these plans are adequate. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
That's the idea.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Dr. Stapleton?
Yeah, I had two questions. One is when I had read this, I was just assuming that there would be some sort of umbrella organization that each of these 10 full-time equivalent consultants would be part of, like it's a team approach. But then when folks have been talking about consultants, then I thought, oh, maybe it's actually 10 sort of separate, sort of like we're using the strategic planning consultants.
Facilitator.
Yeah. So is there an assumption that we're going to go for like one unit that provides a team that goes out there, or is it possible that it's going to be sort of 10 different separate folks? And that seems like not a good approach. So it would be nice to have some consistency in what they're doing across all the LEAs. That was the first question. And the second question was more about deliverables. Like what will they be held to? And if they're not getting the information or the access that they need, would there be some sort of off-ramp for them, and that, we can't do this if things don't happen in a timely manner?
So there's definitely the intent is that there would be an overarching entity that the experts would all be part of, that would be coordinating the work of all the experts. It might be more than 10 individuals, but but that's absolutely the intent. In terms of deliverables, in order to do this work, the experts and the coordinator of the experts will need to develop a rubric, so that all of the teams are looking for the same things as they go into each district and as they're going into the schools. And then in addition to that, there will be a report that will be written for each LEA to provide sort of a summary of the findings and whatever recommendations they have, both for the district and for the state. So it will be a report that will go to the district and also to MSDE and AIB.
Thank you.
Member Robinson?
Hey, hello. I think you kind of touched on my second question, but my first question was, you mentioned that the K-5 literacy plan would be kind of moved up to coincide with how this is going to be structured. But the remaining grades are still due at the same time. Was that July 1st or June 30th, or
June 30th.
June 30th? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then my second question, so you started talking about the rubric that they would use. Can you talk about, I guess, our involvement, us meaning the board members and as well as AIB staff, in terms of how that rubric comes to be and like what's on it, and how do we make sure that it's looking for the things that we feel are important?
So I was actually talking about that with Dr. Collins the other day. So I think part of it is before they work on their rubric, sort of what the outline of a rubric, that elements that need to be part of the rubric that MSD and AIB would provide to them. And we can certainly share that with you all to get your feedback. And then obviously before the rubric, we would have the opportunity to review and comment on the rubric before it's finalized.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Mr. Manco?
Just a comment in terms of, as the program continues to get fleshed out, I think, to me, it seems like it makes sense to have these literacy experts anchoring each team, but also have those literacy experts supplemented by individuals, folks that specialize in literacy within that particular district, who can provide context for what they're seeing, any additional kind of on the ground expertise that would help provide more information for the literacy experts, and then potentially even rounding out the team with individuals from neighboring districts, right? Because I think there is an aspect of kind of cross-pollination that really could be employed in this, where you have a team that's anchored by these literacy experts, but also contains folks that specialize in literacy from the district that is being where the review is being conducted, but also neighboring districts that can, both provide some external context, but also can then take learnings from the visit back to their home district and say, based on, the visits that I've done in this neighboring district, this is what I've seen that's been effective in implementation that we could be utilizing in our district to strengthen our literacy program. So, just an idea as this program continues to get fleshed out. But overall, I think in concept, this is, I applaud the team and MSDE and the chair for really, I think, trying to kind of hone the focus of the expert review team on something that we all deeply care about, and that I think with a very kind of targeted strategic view, we can see hopefully some really, really positive movement in terms of early literacy.
Absolutely. Just to answer your question, for the first part of your suggestion, absolutely, the district literacy, experts at the central office and potentially at the school level would be, I would certainly envision them being part of the team that is meeting with the literacy expert, part of the team. And I will definitely take your suggestion back to the team to talk about in terms of would it make sense to include other district literacy folks in district visits. Whether that happens or not, the intent is absolutely, like you said, the cross-pollination, learning from all of from the districts and having the districts learn from each other, particularly, think what's working, what's not working, or what they've tried that didn't work. So that's absolutely part of the process. Once we have the reports and we've got information to then share it out with all the LEAs and help them use from each other. Mr. Chair, I do not see any other hands at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Did we want, I can read the motion if you would like.
No, we have to go through the CCR.
Before we do that, if we could have a motion to approve this proposal.
All right, please go ahead and read it.
Okay. The motion that you all have is to approve the joint proposal from AIB and MSDE to launch a statewide elementary literacy expert instructional support team to assess instructional plans and practices in early literacy, including coaches, at the district and individual school levels, and provide direct assistance and supports as appropriate based on the team's recommendations.
Thank you. Also move. A second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, now we're open for discussion. Let me go back again and emphasize our relationship with the state board. That I think that we all see the challenge, but also the opportunity to make some progress sooner than later. This is not something where we've drawn a line in the sand to say we'll never cross it. And as Member Manko just mentioned, we can learn and adjust as we go forward, because I think what we need to do is to move forward in a way that provides us with the best information possible, but to continue the analysis so that as we move forward, we can continue to learn and make adjustments. So this is not something that's drawn in the sand that we will never revisit, but I anticipate as we go forward, we will continue to modify it and to make certain that it provides us with the information that we need. So with that, are there any questions, comments, or recommendations people like to make to the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none? Okay, we're now ready for the motion. All in favor of the motion as so stated, please indicate it by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
I wasn't sure.
Are there any
Any,
opposed?
any opposition? Okay, the motion is so approved. Thank you.
Great. The next item on the agenda is a discussion of potential legislative recommendations for the upcoming session. You have a document, and I will run through these. Many of these were came up as part of the Blueprint Comprehensive Plan update process. So most of them should sound very familiar. So the first relates to identifying families with 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds who may be eligible to enroll in full-day pre-kindergarten, particularly in the lower income levels that are currently the priority for enrollment. And so in the comprehensive plan, the AIB had asked local departments of health and social services to share contact information for families that are income eligible with the school systems, so that they could follow up directly with those families about enrollment. But it turns out that they aren't able to share that information without statutory authority to actually share that contact information between the health and social services departments and the school systems. So the legislative change would be to authorize/require those local departments to share that contact information for the families with their local school systems.
All right.
That's the first item. The second item is also related to pre-K, and it really is a continuation of a discussion and legislation from last session. As you recall, the legislature adopted and they extended the timeline for when pre-K teachers and teaching assistants have to meet new high quality standards from the 25-26 school year to the 27-28 school year. So they provided 2 more years for teachers and teaching assistants to achieve the additional high quality standards around. For teaching assistants, it is holding a CDA or an AA degree. For the teachers, it is they're required to have an early childhood certification. So that the legislature extended that deadline by 2 years. However, the current practices of MSDE have not changed to allow for that additional 2-year on-ramp. And this is something that we've been talking with MSDE about and trying to sort of align around where there is where it's something that needs to be clarified in the statute versus something that is in regulation or in program. procedures. So we're still actually, we just talked about that again earlier this week. And so we're still discussing this. So this may not be necessary, but it may be. So we still have a little more work to do on this one, but and if it's not necessary, if a statutory change is not necessary, then we would not recommend it.
Okay, thank you.
So really, it's all about, meeting the legislative intent of providing 2 more years for teachers and teaching assistants to meet those standards, and not making it a condition of state funding that they meet those standards sooner. The third item relates to the Patty and Judy centers, and we talked about this. We've talked about this with MSDE, and we talked about this during the comprehensive plan update process. Essentially, the Judy centers and Patty centers receive grant funding through the state once they are operational, but there is a process to develop a center, and the need to provide some funding to support the time when the center is under development, but not yet operational, not serving families yet. And so this recommendation is to allow for Patty Center and Judy Center grants to be provided to support 1 year of program development before the center is actually operational. The next item relates to the timeline for when the CTE committee is required to establish goals to meet the statewide goals to meet the blueprint requirement that 45% of high school students complete a high school level of a registered apprenticeship or another industry recognized credential. The statute that was originally required to be submitted on December 1st of 2022. The CTE committee is still in the process of, they're really in the startup process, and we all know how hard that is. They're still having some budgetary challenges. And so the work to set these goals, statewide goals, between now and when the requirement is in 2031, they have not been able to focus on doing that work yet. And so the recommendation is to change that date to June 1st of 2024. So, essentially not quite 7 months from now. So that's that recommendation. And then the last recommendation again relates to something that was discussed during the 23 legislative session. There was a bill that didn't quite make it over the finish line that would have altered the date for when the interim program evaluation that the AIB is required to hire an outside consultant to essentially look at what progress has been made under the blueprint. And the initial date in the statute is actually October of 2024. So a year from now, a little less than a year from now. The legislation that didn't quite pass by midnight on the last day of session would have changed that date to December of 2026, recognizing that with the timeline of when the law actually took effect, and the blueprint funding was delayed starting a year, that there should be a little more time before we bring in someone to really look at what progress has been made and report out on that. We still need to bring someone on sooner rather than later to start doing that work. But so the proposal was to move that date to December of 26, and then the AIB is required to submit a report to the Governor and General Assembly with recommendations, with what the consultant provides, and then the AIB's recommendations about any changes to make to the law or anything else to January 15th of 2027. So the last recommendation is to essentially propose the dates that the House and the Senate had both agreed on in the bill that didn't pass last session. So those are all items that came up in our Blueprint Comprehensive Plan update process. There is one additional item that has come to light more recently in terms of actually like understanding the issue. And so this relates to the National Board Certification fee subsidy that the state and local school systems provide for teachers who are pursuing national board certification. This program has been around in the state for over 20 years. It was, I think, 1999. It was part of an initial set of teacher quality incentives that the legislature adopted. And for all those years, any school staff who pursued national board certification was eligible for the subsidy. When the Blueprint recommended continuing the subsidy, because of the way that the law had to be kind of recodified a bit, and things got moved around in the process of the Blueprint bill being drafted. The unintended consequence is that the national board fee subsidy is now only available to teachers who meet the definition of a classroom teacher under the Blueprint for purposes of the career ladder. So it has limited who is able to access the subsidy, who used to be able to access it. And the real challenge there is that some of the very people that we would like to become national board certified and choose to go back into the classroom, instructional specialists, administrators, as well as assistants principals and principals who under the Blueprint are required to hold national board certification beginning in 2029. None of them are eligible under current law for the national board fee subsidy. They were prior to the Blueprint. They no longer are. And I can say that I think in some ways this really is a technical correction, because the national board fee subsidy there wasn't a definition in the statute of who was eligible. It wasn't limited to teachers, classroom teachers who meet a certain definition. And now it is. So that is the last recommendation. And this is something that school system Blueprint coordinators have raised, educators have raised. It's definitely a concern.
All right. Just to be sure, most of these, not all of them, are more technical in nature. Is there a budget implication on any of what it is? Would it be significant here? On any comprehensively looking at all of them?
Not significantly. I mean, for this last one that I'm discussing, again, prior to the Blueprint, more school staff were eligible for the subsidy than are currently. So it is possible that that there will be more folks pursuing national board certification under the Blueprint than, let's say, did last year. But prior to the Blueprint, all of those folks were eligible under the Blueprint. So it's
and the intent of the Blueprint is to encourage more people to be national board certified, and this would be inconsistent with that objective, clearly.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. All right, any questions about the legislative proposals that are out there for consideration? And what's the time frame for us to get feedbacks to today, the time, or we have any more time left before we can look at this again if there are questions?
The annual report for the AIB is supposed to include legislative recommendations for the upcoming session. We have indicated that we have said that we will submit the annual report on December 1st.
Okay.
So there's certainly time for feedback in terms of discussion and now and after the meeting. But we are planning to share a draft of the annual report with you all after Thanksgiving, just for your review and comment. And then our goal is to get that report in by December.
I was just making reference to the legislative calendar for this, so what flexibility. Okay. I think that we should include all of these items in the report for legislative action. It is always possible, even if we put it in a report, we find something that is woefully wrong, that we can always withdraw it, but it's best to have it in so that people have at least some indication of what our intent is. And then we can move accordingly to the legislative calendar and make whatever adjustments or changes that are necessary. But it's best, in my opinion, to put it in, especially given that most of this is very technical to begin with.
Dr. Stapleton has a question.
Yeah, I just, when the chair asked the question about budgetary implications, I was thinking about number 5 in that we have been budgeted for that evaluation. So what happens with that? Does it roll over to the next year, or do we have to figure out what to do about that money? If approved, if it becomes legislative.
Number 5 is the last one.
No, number 5 relates to the program evaluation requirement and the timing of when the interim evaluation would be due. That is something that is part of our confidential budget proposal to the administration. So I'm happy to discuss that offline.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, let's suggest this process. We'll get the information to you prior to the time that it goes in the report. If there are questions or concerns about it, we can make adjustments there too. But it's my intent to include all of these items in the annual report and make adjustments as we proceed in case there are some challenges or questions we need to work on later. Okay? Now, keep in mind also that this is just from AIB. There are an awful lot of legislative proposals that are circulating out there that are not ours. And we may comment on some of them as we go forward, but this is things that we are recommending at this point in time. Whether we recommend some other things or comment on other things may be determined at a later point, because there are quite a few others by members of the General Assembly as well as interested groups in the public that are made and organizations in the public that are made suggested for legislative changes. But this is not part of that group. Okay.
Okay, so then now we are on to our last item, which is discussion of the state board's proposed college and career ready standard. You all have the state board's proposal that a public hearing was held on that last week. And we just wanted to, give you the opportunity to discuss it. As of now, the state board has said that they will be discussing the standard at their next board meeting on December 5th. And may take action at that time.
So let me add a couple of points on this. We spent a great deal of time because this is really our North Star for how we determine progress and what we want our students to achieve. We spent a great deal of time with the study itself. We had a couple of meetings with the state board for which a number of our board members participated. But we need to step back for just a moment and understand, first of all, the challenge and the problem that we face. As I indicated, this is our North Star. We want to make sure that our students are college and career ready by the end of the 10th grade, but no later than the end of the 12th grade. And that's a pretty tall order. So the question becomes, if we step back for a second, how do we know that they're ready? There was an assessment required, an empirical study that the blueprint indicated should be done by the state board. I think they contract with AIR to, in fact, provide that study, the empirical study. And we had an opportunity to discuss that study with them on a number of occasions. And we raised, I thought, with some very legitimate questions. And so I left with a couple of things that were at least clear to me that this should not be something in terms of our acceptance of whatever we do going forward should not be written in concrete or line in the sand that we can never, ever cross. That there's additional analysis that needs to be made to make certain that the recommendations that are proposed are recommendations that we feel addresses the question of what it is that our students actually need to know in order to take those credit-bearing courses in an open enrollment university or college within our state. As I indicated before, right now, probably over 60% of those students are required to have some form of remediation in language arts and in mathematics. And so the study provided a different path, a number of paths that could be considered by the board to evaluate the consistency between what is actually taught and whether or not those students are actually ready, because also there are other implications. They can be dual enrolled, post-secondary enrollment in courses throughout the state. It provides them with the pathway that hopefully they will be able to meet and have opportunity for gainful employment once they leave, or to further build on that once they're in college. And so this is quite important. And this is why we took so much time to look at the study, to make some assessments about it. And I also have to indicate very clearly that the state board put a great deal of work in it as well, because they understood the significance of it. And we've had some wonderful conversations with them. And at least up to this point, I think we've come close to what I think is an agreement. That agreement provides something, as you may recall, I had some reluctance about initially, that is to look at grade point average as one of the mechanisms for proper assessment for CCR purposes. Given where the industry has gone at this point in time and the acceptance of that across the board, with some question, I think that that issue is fairly well accepted now across the universe. Now, in addition to the 3.0 average, there was an additional requirement, that is to have a C, a minimum of a C in Algebra 1 that is added to that. But now keep in mind, there are several places that you go in terms of this assessment for these credit-bearing courses. It is a multiple approach. And the question we had before was A, whether or not we were changing or moving the goalposts, watering down the requirements. B, are we making them too restrictive? And there was another question that popped up that I don't think we've had an opportunity to fully evaluate as well. The assessment of that 60%. How does that 60% in terms of remediation aligns with what we believe is an adequate assessment? And I'm not sure that I've gotten a satisfactory answer as it relates to the college assessment that gives us that 60% to begin with. But that's a question for another day. But it's a question that I think that we have to address at some point, because unless that is fully addressed to make the determination that those students are properly assessed for those credit-bearing courses, then this creates a problem that I think is restrictive for so many of the students in our system. But what we have here today is a multiple approach. We've discussed it before in terms of our North Star. We've discussed it before in terms of the current assessment, assessment. Only about a little less than 40% of our students are college and career ready. There was some determination or assessments made that we are much better than that, because if you include the grade point average, that would include a higher number of students that would be college and career ready. The question of the Algebra 1, of a C therein, may have some questions about the final number, but it will be a significant number higher than that 40% that we have here today. I think that I've covered that correctly. We have an assessment. I, again, want to thank the state board. They put in a great deal of work with this. Want to thank AIR as well. We're going to be working with them over the years to make sure that we can fine tune this to the degree that we all believe is acceptable. And so this is the first start. It is not the end. In order for this to be successful, we would need ongoing assessments and additional studies to make sure that we've got this right, because an awful lot depends on getting this aspect of us right. So let's now entertain any questions or issues. This is just for general discussion today. General discussions, as indicated before, the state board will be taking this matter up and either making a recommendation or I'm not sure it's just a recommendation, or approving this or altering this on the 5th, or if not, maybe at the next meeting in January. So want to add anything in addition to that, Madam Executive Director?
No, I'm happy to, respond to questions or see what other members have to say. Dr. Doss?
Yes, and I am glad that the chair did say that, that we are fine tuning and this is just a start. And I think one aspect that we need to address is to clarify or clarify, I guess that's the best thing to say, for this standard, including the CTE pathway, or how do we emphasize, and the other way, that CTE is included as part of this standard? I've heard some questions when I'm talking about the standard. So I wanted us to kind of talk about that today at the meeting.
I didn't catch that. Say the last part of it again. That was some confusion. Was it confusion again?
Some questions about does this standard apply to CTE? Does this standard measure readiness for the CTE pathway? Are we going that way? Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah.
So if I could just take a minute to kind of remind everyone about sort of the blueprint vision of the CCR standard. So what the blueprint, what the commission discussed was, what are the foundational skills and knowledge in English language arts and math that every student, regardless of what path they choose to take, is prepared for that path, is prepared for that work. So what are the foundational skills that we want all students to have, and that they need to be successful in whatever they do? And that's what the 10th grade CCR standard, just specifically for English and math, is intended to be. And so that's for every student. So that would include students that, want to pursue a 4-year college admission, students who want to pursue any different types of career pathways, and as well as dual enrollment. So that the intent is that the 10th grade standard is for all students. Does that help?
Yes, that helps.
Additional questions or comments?
I see Dr. Kerwin's hand. I thought I saw Member Robinson.
You did, and then you answered what I was going to ask.
Okay. Dr. Kerwin? You're on mute.
A few general comments, if I could. I've had and expressed in the past some concerns about the AIR approach. I think they did a lot of good work, but to me, the missing element here, which I hope in the coming years can be addressed, is there has not been, in my opinion, a rigorous enough analysis of what the prerequisites are, the prerequisite knowledge and skills are for an entry-level community college math course. And then to back map that into our high schools to see if students are learning that material. That was supposed to be, I thought, part of the AR study, and I think they did do some work on that, but in my mind, it was not it was not adequately done. So I am hopeful that as we go forward, this will be something MSD and can tackle. I am perfectly willing to, not that it's my call, but I'm perfectly willing to go along with this, as the chair said, a preliminary or an initial CCR. But my concern is that to tell a student and his or her parents, his or her parents, that if you get a C in Algebra 1, you're ready for college level work in mathematics, is misinformation. It simply isn't. And so for us to say that getting a C in Algebra 1 means you're college and career ready when you go to community college, you definitely are not necessarily ready.
Yeah,
and so,
is it that we don't know, or is it not they're not ready?
they're not ready.
Okay.
I mean, what I mean is that sure there could be a student, but as a general proposition, if you do C-level work, and I suspect Justin will nod his head in agreement with me, if you do C-level work in Algebra 1, then now there'll be some exceptions, some very bright kid who was bored and didn't work hard and so on and so. But as a general standard, getting a C in Algebra 1 isn't adequate knowledge or skill to be successful in credit-bearing courses at the college level. So we have to start somewhere. So I understand that starting with Algebra 1 might be the right thing to do initially. But to me, at the very least, as we go forward and get more data, I would suspect that having earned an A or B in the course that follows Algebra 1 would be a more reasonable standard for college and career ready. After all, most students will take Algebra 1 in the 9th grade, and we're talking about a 10th grade assessment. So it's that course they take in the 10th grade that is going to have a better bearing on their ability to handle credit-bearing courses at the collegiate level. So I understand the complexity of all of this and the difficulties and the hard work that everybody's done on it. And I can understand moving forward with this, but I certainly hope that this is considered as the chair suggested, an initial preliminary CCR that is going to be studied and worked on, because so much is at stake with this, not just for us, because it's sort of our North Star for the blueprint, but when kids go to college and having been stamped with approval of college and career readiness, and they get into college level work and they fail, that's not where we want to be. So this alignment that I mentioned at the beginning is so critically important. So I just, again, think this is an okay starting point, but a lot more work is going to be needed to be done, in my mind, for us to gain confidence that we have achieved an appropriate CCR standard.
Thank you. In addition, question, Madam Executive Director, as you see?
No, I don't see any other hands right now. I just wanted to, if I could, just in terms of the data that AIR collected around prerequisites, that is something that we have asked MSDE if there's more information that AIR collected, and they're working on that. So to the extent that there was potentially information collected that wasn't necessarily that we could do further analysis of, that's one thing we're looking into. And I think a lot of what the vice chair said really emphasizes the point that we need additional study. We need validation studies to look at what is the impact for students who have a 3.0 GPA and a C in algebra. Are they successful in their entry level credit bearing course? And if not, why not? And so I think just the continuing to do further study of the standard, this initial standard is going to be critical.
Right. Let me add in reference to what the vice chair said. I had an opportunity last night to listen to and hear some of the comments from a few that testified before the state board. And I was a little bit complex and confused and to some degree a little bit disappointed as well. What the state board has before us, at least they will be considered tomorrow, and I agree with it, next week, a couple of weeks, is a change. And some may even argue that they are moving the goalposts. And in addition to that, you're allowing for a multitude of approaches to at least be deemed to be CCR ready. The question that the vice chair has raised is that what we have is a very minimum standard. And some are complaining about a very minimum standard in light of what we're trying to provide for our students. The worst thing that we could do, the very worst thing that we could do, would be not to provide at least some minimum standard that gives us rigor, so that we are not misleading potential students that they are college or career ready And if we can't get to this point of ninth grade algebra with a C, then it says an awful lot about whether or not we are trying to have the accountability that we need in order to improve the results that are there. As indicated before, I was somewhat reluctant about the grade point average in this, but I've come around to accept that. But for us not to add into that at least some minimum requirements of a C, to not to have a little bit more rigor in this, I think it would be irresponsible for us to tell parents that your children could be successful without coming up with at least these minimum standards. Otherwise, that would be the greatest injustice to so many who are looking for us to make significant academic improvement that would help our state and our nation. And so I fully support this, as I indicated before. It's the first step in the right direction, but we can't continue to wave and to simply make passes on this when we may be leading our students and those families into a path that would not provide them with the kind of future that they want. And so I encourage the state board to go forward with this, to be supportive of what you have before us, and let's have some standards that at least to start with that are going to move us in the right direction. I see another hand up there. Who's that? Is that Britt? I'm not sure.
So, Mr. Chair, if this is Jennifer, I think I just had the question, I just as a clarifying point, from the AIB's perspective, we agree that this is something that requires more study, and that we have a starting point right now, and that the expectation is that we will continue to collect data not only on these particular metrics that have been identified as CCR ready, but on a host of additional metrics, so that as we move forward at some point, we'll be able to actually do a deeper dive into what is actually the sort of the measures by which we should be really leaning into. And in the meantime, as we're doing that study or that deeper dive, we are not in any way creating pathways or creating limits to access to pathways based on readiness. Is that correct?
Correct. And this certainly will increase potentially the pathway for readiness as they've looked at it. Because the numbers now is like 40%, and certainly with both these two requirements, it will go up. The question is not whether or not they go up, but ultimately those students that have gone up and the numbers that we have on the other end reflects less remediation and preparedness for entry-bearing coursework. Now, the question about the assessment at the college level is something I think needs to be addressed, because there have been some question wave whether or not that assessment truly accurately reflect whether or not students need remediation. But that's another issue for another time that will probably be a part of an ongoing study later on for us to look at.
There are two other hands. I'm not sure who raised their hand first.
Go in alphabetical order.
Member Robinson was first, so.
So I think we've talked a lot about, this might not be perfect, but it's a step in the right direction. I've definitely shared my views before on this topic, even at the state board meeting that I attended. I guess I'm wondering, are there program evaluation timelines specifically about how, when we might be, or they might be reevaluating the standard? Like, how do we know that we're not just saying, we should look at this later on and see how it's going, and then are we actually going to do it?
Well, one of the things, we have an annual report every year, so we can make that assessment ourselves in terms of the boards presenting to us information for our report and the comprehensive plan. so that if need be, we can make sure that it's included therein. So we have something that is timely based upon some reasonableness in terms of an assessment, so they would not be something we're just dropping the ball on. So we can easily do that. I think would be at least a start point for it.
Okay.
Member Manco had his hand up.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that has been said in this, in this conversation, as this just being a starting point and continuing to move forward to, hopefully, hone in on a series of metrics that are, that have a higher level of efficacy. I think it's also important to acknowledge that the interim standard, what we currently were working off of, was, this change is a move in the right direction. Before there, the level of efficacy, according, if I remember correctly, with the AIR study, was about 40%. And, I think worse off, there were a lot of false negatives, which means that there were students that were locked out of, really locked out of opportunities because they didn't test high enough, but at least according to the study, had the propensity to be successful if given the opportunity. So, I think to move from a position where we have 40% efficacy to moving to 60%, I think is not totally where we want to be, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. And I applaud that movement, and I also acknowledge the fact that we still have a ways to go, and continuing to study this and see how the newly proposed measures are impacting student readiness. I think and continuing to track that and seeing what we can do to continue to hone those measures so that they're even they have even higher efficacy, I think is the correct direction. But I also want to acknowledge that, I think this is clearly the newly described measure, I think, is clearly a step in the right direction from where we were.
Going back to your question and one from Member Robinson, I think we need to have a fine-tuned date for a study that we get some feedback on, because I think everyone is at least reacting to okay, but with that caveat that we need that. So, Madam Executive Director, we need to probably sit down and talk with the state board, figure out what that timeline would be, and have that written in such a way that it is clear what we're talking about here. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions or comments? We're not taking action today. We're basically giving this as an informational item. We'll see, because we don't have a recommendation yet from the board in terms of what it ultimately may do, but at least what they're considering is what we have here on the paper. If there are no additional questions, I think we're now prepared to go into an executive session, and we will conclude our meeting from the executive session. So why don't you read the state law reference to our ability to do so?
Mr. Chair, for its last agenda item, the board expects to perform an administrative function and receive legal advice from counsel pursuant to sections 3-103 and 3-305B7 of the general provisions article of the Annotated Code of Maryland. The motion is to close this meeting and then subsequently to adjourn from the closed session.
Okay, so moved. A second to the motion?
Yes, second.
Okay, it's moved probably second that we proceed now to executive session, and we will conclude the meeting from the executive session. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposition? Hearing none, we'll take 5 minutes and we'll be in executive session. Thank you.